Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well this Saturday. And I hope this is working because this is Facebook's new live platform. So I'm not sure if I'm doing it well, but I can see one person is watching. So hi, whoever you are. I'm also recording this on my phone. So if you see me look to this side, you'll know I'm looking at my phone. So I wanted to tell this tale for a while, but with everything, I have a lot going on. So eventually I've got around to it. I don't expect this will interest the guys in the group too much, but you never know because it's always helpful to be educated, of course. But I do hope that my experience is going to help some women. Hopefully this video is maybe 30 minutes, but if you have a cup of tea or something with you, just sit back and hopefully you learn something. This is my experience, what I did. I don't expect people to go to the extremes that I go to for my health, but I do want to give you some insight of what happened. Anyway, okay, so I'll just start. So last September, so that will be September 2019, I started to feel really tired and I couldn't focus on more than one thought at a time. So I was like constantly getting flustered. I couldn't concentrate on podcasts. I was just a mess. And although my nutrition was really good and supplements, I hadn't been sleeping well, and I didn't sleep well for most of the summer last year, both from stress, but I don't sleep well in really hot weather, and then the kids off all summer. Then I had my sister come visit for a week. I was very tired come September. And I remember going out for a walk and listening to a podcast, and it was like 5 p.m. in the day, and I was exhausted. And I remember listening to a podcast on adrenal fatigue, and I was like, oh shit, this is me. And how did I not even recognize this because I deal with this with other people? But once it mentioned the inability to control your focus and focus on thoughts, I was like, oh no, this is me. So I started to recognize that I was in a stage of adrenal fatigue. My training was awesome. My nutrition was awesome. Everything was good except my sleep. And I was overworking on this lack of sleep. So I was overtraining, over teaching, overworking, over taking care of kids on this lack of sleep. And it just caught up with me. And I rarely get sick. I get the odd head cold, sometimes a sore throat, but I rarely get sick. And all of a sudden, I wasn't feeling well. Then come October, I start feeling something different in my lady parts. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I never get infections. I've never had a bladder infection. Like, what the hell? So we were going on vacation to Florida at the end of October 2019. And it was like a week before going away, I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm going to go see my doctor and see what she has to say, because I was in agony. In a way, I couldn't sit down. I was exhausted. I couldn't sit down because my lady parts were burning. I was exhausted. I was irritable. I was just not feeling good. I was not feeling myself. I knew something was up. So I went to my doctor and she kind of fobbed me off and was like, oh, it's just candida. Take this. You'll be fine. So I was at the stage where I was like, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. I can't feel like this for 2 weeks. So she gave me a topical application. I did that. Honestly, it didn't help. So I endured through the vacation. I stayed on top of, like, I went to Whole Foods, got my apple cider vinegar, got my berberine, did everything I normally do to try make myself feel as good as I could. At this stage in Florida, Roman had got this really bad chest infection that was going around. So at this stage, I thought I had a candida infection because this was what the doctor had told me. And then Roman gets this really bad chest infection, which of course passed to me in Florida. So I was coughing up a small child in Florida, and then I lost my voice, and it was just a big mess. But this is where I recognized that my immune system had crashed. And this was from here on out, from Florida on out, it was a very humbling experience for me, because I always think, well, I teach people how to be healthy. I consider myself to be healthy. I'm strong. I never have any issues. Everything is awesome, or as far as I thought it was. So we get back from Florida. I go to my doctor. She says, like, okay, well, let's do a pap then, because it didn't clear up. I hadn't taken any antibiotics at this stage, because they're usually a last resort for me. I like to do my own kind of experimenting in my research and see what's up and try a few things. And this is part of being a biohacker. We do a lot of trial and error, and we see what works for our bodies and what doesn't. Anyway, so then come December, I think it was. No, I think it was the end of November. My doctor wanted to do a pap on me. So those of you watching in Ireland, that's a smear test. So that's where they check the cervical cells inside the vagina. So my doctor does that, and she comes back and tells me that there was Candida present, but that they had found some abnormal cells. So they were sending them for further testing. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, at least we know it's Candida. And that chances are it was because I had gone into adrenal fatigue that it shut down my immune system, because we all know excessive fatigue and stress on the adrenals shuts down the immune system. I'd never felt that as tired as I did in my life as I did in September. So she sends them off. I get a phone call in December, which made me panic, saying, at this stage, all the doctors were gone on vacation for Christmas. So I get a phone call. Miss Linney, we have found some abnormal cells on your pap, and we'd like you to come in and speak to the doctor. So I'm like, well, if it's an emergency, I'll come in straight away. But if it's not, can I wait till January when my doctor is back? Because they wanted to see me, a male doctor, and my doctor is female, and I prefer personally speaking to her. I feel she can relate better because she is a woman. And also pretty much because she's a woman, because I can't say she takes on everything I say to her. So January 13th, I think, came around, January 8th, and I saw my doctor. So they had told me on the phone it was nothing to be concerned about. Oh, yeah, it can wait till January. So I wait till January, and I go and see my doctor, and she sits me down, and she has this big worried face, and she's like, okay, I don't want you to stress, just relax. So we came across some abnormalities in your pap. So of course I get a lump in my throat, and I'm like, okay. So then she tells me, all pretty much scribbling on a piece of paper, there's all these different levels of cells that you can get around your cervix. I'm sure many of you know this. I know many of you do, because I've spoken to many clients about this. So we have your low risk cells, and then we have your high risk cells. So the high risk cells pretty much are showing cancerous activity, and that you may need to have the cells removed or further looked at or whatnot. And I'm like, okay. And I was upset. And I could feel, the lump in my throat and the tears behind my eyes, but I'm trying to be calm. And okay, so what's the next step? And she's like, well, I have referred you to the women's clinic for a colposcopy, and then we'll go from there. So a colposcopy is where they put this big magnifying glass pretty much up into your cervix, and they spray some acid, which is pretty much vinegar, onto the cells that they feel are abnormal. And if the cells turn white or fizz up, like if you put acid on something, they will indicate that the cells are cancerous. So, okay, right. So the earliest date I can get for colposcopy is February 11th, which is bloody miles away at this stage, because I'm on like January 8th, and I'm like feeling sick to my stomach. Oh my God, like you've no idea the thoughts that were going through my mind. Like I said, this was very humbling experience. I thought I was superwoman for so long. And now I'm in a different country, away from my family, away from my friends. I have 2 kids to think of, and I could have cancer and I could be dying. Pretty much that's what I was thinking. There is a chance I could die. And I won't lie, I went out and I got life insurance at an increased price or an increased amount to make sure that if I died, my kids would be taken care of. And it sounds extreme, but I know some of you are going to relate to this, especially moms. Like, shit, something's wrong with me. Who's going to take care of my kids? That's the first thing we think of generally. So in the meantime, I was still experiencing the burning sensation and the uncomfortable sensation in my lady parts. So I'm like, okay, well, apart from the colposcopy, what can we do about this? Because it's clearly not candida. I didn't have any other symptoms. So while I was talking to my doctor, and this is important to highlight because this is kind of where conventional or family doctors annoy me a lot. So I'm trying to get as many answers as I can because I'm a scientist and I like to know what's what, and I really like to doctor myself. So I say to her, okay, well, what could be causing this? Why would I have cancer cells? Like I take amazing care of myself, eat all my anti-inflammatories. I spend a fortune on supplements. I do every biohacking tool that I can. And she says, well, the cells look like they're very inflamed. So that word struck home with me, and I talk a lot about inflammation with you. So the word struck home, and that word has stuck in my head ever since. So inflammation, okay. So the cells look very inflamed. In my head, that translated to, okay, my cancerous cells look like they're swollen and they're on fire and they're very warm. So they're inflamed. Okay. She also said, well, I had asked her, is there a chance that at this stage, remember, I thought I had candida. Is there a chance that candida can interfere with pap cells, pap results, and give you an abnormal result? And I kid you not, she laughed at me and it's like, no, there's no way of that. So I was like, okay, I find that hard to believe because if one had a severe candida infection, it is going to be in their lady parts and it can travel up as far as the cervix. So I came home and I did my research and I looked into a whole load of stuff. And I know I was talking to a few clients and friends at the same time as I was going through this. And the more I looked on PubMed and into the studies, I was finding all of this research saying, yes, candida can interfere with pap cells. Candida can cause abnormal pap cells to appear. And I'm like, I can't believe she laughed at me. Like she should have said, maybe there's a possibility, but she laughed anyway, pushed that aside. So I looked a lot into that. In the meantime, she had made an appointment, she being my doctor, had made an appointment for me in a gynecologist in Calgary to get a second opinion. So I went to the gynecologist it was January 20th. And that gynecologist sat me down. She was a very nice woman. She answered all of my questions, and I had a lot of questions. And she firstly said, do you understand what's happening? And I was like, to be honest, no, I don't really. My doctor didn't tell me too much. So she took out my graph and my results and she went through the results and she told me everything. She said I was in very high risk. So my cells were high risk, meaning they were precancerous. She said they're going to do a colposcopy, but chances are you're going to need a LEAP as well. Now, I can't remember the acronym for the LEAP, but a LEAP pretty much is where they come in and they'll shave off part of your cervix. So they shave off the cells. And yes, it is as horrific as it sounds, especially if there's any men watching. Count your lucky stars you were born a male. So she was like, and worst case scenario where we don't catch all the cancerous cells, there may need to be further removal of the cervix and blah, blah, blah. As at this stage, I'm like, they're telling me I have cancer. I'm dying. what the fuck is going on here? I'm freaking out, trying not to cry. Remember, at the same time, I have 2 kids to take care of and a whole bunch of clients. So I'm trying to focus on me and that. It was very stressful. So while I was at the gynecologist, she was great. She answered everything, which was reassuring, because sometimes having some answers and direction can be comforting because we know what action we need to take then. So she also said, I was like, look, my lady parts are burning. I'm very uncomfortable. I can't sit down. Like, what the hell? And she's like, look, we'll do another test if you want. I'll do another pap. I'll gladly check. She says, it sounds like you may have a mycoplasm, so we'll look into that. So I was like, oh, that would be amazing if you could. So she did that. She was lovely. I felt better leaving, kind of more equipped with information, because then I had more to research on. I had more to look into. So, blah, blah, blah. One thing happened at the gynecologist. I said, is this definitive? Am I definitely going to need a leap? Do I definitely have cancer? If you're seeing these cells, is there any way I can undo this? Is there something I can do to make myself healthier again? And she's like, no, like usually this is it. We just go ahead with the procedure. Except she said to me, and I swear on Roman's life, and I love Roman to bits. She said, there are some rare cases, and I quote, she said, there are some rare cases where we see a woman's immune system is strong enough that it will flush out cancerous cells by itself. And when they come back for further investigation, the cells are gone. So I laugh now when I think of it, because I think of Dumb and Dumber, where Jim Carrey is like, so you're saying there's a chance? So I grabbed onto that sentence and I held onto that sentence for dear life, because I was afraid. I was really afraid. And I was like, okay, she's saying there is a chance that I could reverse this. I have a lot of confidence in myself and my skills. I know I'm very knowledgeable. If anybody can do this, I can do this. And I had this big motivating factor in that I couldn't leave my kids. I don't want to die. I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't want to go through all of that. I don't want to go through cancer screening and just the whole lot. And I don't want my kids' lives to be upended and upset, and who would take care of them. And I tell you, I looked at Roman some nights and I cried and I worried and I was nauseous and I had butterflies. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But she gave me this sentence, the gynecologist. Some of you might know her. I can't remember her name. Dr. Benoit, I think. She's in the northwest of Calgary. She's lovely. But she gave me this sentence saying, there is a chance. Like, if anyone can fucking do this, I can do this. And I am going to do this. I delved deep into the research. I put aside all my other research that I was doing, and I delved deep into Candida first. I looked at, then I looked into mycoplasm, then I went big head on into inflammation. I know a lot about inflammation, or I thought I did, but I didn't until I delved deep into it. I delved deep into the ins and outs, like the simplest things, what type of water you're drinking and how that's going to affect the cells and the mitochondria and inflammation, and right down to the smallest thing I looked at. What could be affecting me? What could be doing this? So this is quite a story, but I promise I'm going to get to the end soon. I think we're making good time on 19 minutes. So I did everything I could. I looked into the research. I was blown away with what I found. I spent a lot of money on supplements and biohacks because I was adamant I was going to go to Foothills Women's Clinic in February, and they were going to tell me that I was okay. And I was adamant. I kept that in my mind. So I reflected on my lifestyle. Okay, like my exercise routine is awesome. I walk. At that stage, my sleep had improved a lot because I sleep better in cold weather and in darkness. So my sleep was better. My nutrition was good, except one thing wasn't good, and that was my stress. My stress was not good. Although I practiced self-care, I know my stress was not good. So each day for a couple of months, I'd say probably from last September, I was getting a lot of inflammation in that I was waking up and my neck and my chest would feel really tight, like it was enclosing in on my esophagus. My face was very warm. I constantly had a headache. I was irritable. I was very inflamed a lot. And this would come and go daily, and I could feel it. I'd be like, okay, that's my stress for the day. There was some evenings where I couldn't reply to clients because I couldn't look at my phone. I just couldn't. I was like, I can't focus. My head, it's swelling. Just everything felt swollen and inflamed. And it always came back to stress. When I was talking to too many people, when I was doing too much, when I was reading too much, when I do a lot. I do a lot of research because this is my job. But it always came back to that. So I was like, I'm pretty sure that is the root of my issue right now with me not being 100%. I can feel this inflammation. I know I'm stressed, even though I put all the recommendations that I recommend to other people into practice. I can feel that I am stressed. So I need to get a hold on this. I need to get a hold on the inflammation. So, of course, I start to dial in my sleep. I start to dial in my exercise in a sense that I was doing stuff that made me feel really good, but fueling my body and supporting my body throughout the workouts and making sure I had enough recovery time. So I was starting to train 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off. And if I woke up and I felt I can't go to the gym today, I would take that day off and I wouldn't feel bad. I wouldn't guilt myself, but maybe I'd go for a walk or I'd do some abdominal work or aerobics or something like that. So I started to change how I was training. And I will say, as I changed that and took more rest days, I started to lean out and get more defined as well because I was resting more. So now my body was starting to recover more. I looked into all herbs and supplements. I did everything. And two things that blew my mind were, one, molecular hydrogen that I'm very passionate about. So passionate that I went and I got my H2 advisor certificate because it just blew my mind what I came across. I put together a blog for you guys to read with loads of citations in it. Anyway, so I ordered molecular hydrogen. I think it was the day that I came back from the gynecologist and she said there was a chance. I ordered molecular hydrogen and it arrived from America because it wasn't on Amazon yet. It arrived from America or the States in like 4 or 5 days. So it arrives in the post. I open the box. At that stage, I'm super swollen and I'm feeling inflamed and I know what's coming next. I was used to this feeling at this stage. I was used to it, but I knew it wasn't normal. I'm not supposed to feel like this. So I open the hydrogen and I do my first dose of molecular hydrogen. And I messaged my friend Megan and I was like, Megan, I literally drank the hydrogen 2 minutes ago and the inflammation is gone. It's just gone. And she's like, no way. I was like, I swear to God, I'm not lying. Maybe it's a placebo effect, but it's gone. So I start doing the hydrogen. Now I start looking into quality of water. Okay, so how does water affect our cells? What else affects water? How does our body, so our cells make metabolic water. It makes our own water. So that's how we can survive without water in a desert because we make our own water. It's like camels. So camels don't store water in their humps. They store fat in their humps. And then when they go into their form of ketosis, that fat breaks down and it makes metabolic water. So it's the purest, cleanest water that you can get. So I start looking into that. But I can't drink metabolic water because that has to be made in the body. So what's the cleanest water I can get outside? That is low deuterium. And if you don't know about deuterium, so deuterium is a molecule, and I did a blog post about this. I'm not going to go into it, but it's this big chunky molecule that is found in water, in different grades of water. And deuterium, it pretty much, you've got your H2O, while deuterium is your H3O. So it's a bigger water molecule to simplify things. And when it gets into the cells, it goes into the mitochondria, and the mitochondria has a rotor head, and it jams up that rotor, so then the mitochondria don't work. So your cells stop working properly pretty much. Whereas very clean, low deuterium water goes in and everything works beautifully and smoothly and amazingly. This is not a concern for kids because kids can tolerate a lot more deuterium than adults. Their metabolic functions are different. But as we get older, we start to become more sensitive and store more deuterium. So I'm looking at this, I'm looking at molecular hydrogen. I come across all these articles from Dr. Jack Kruse about low deuterium water. And I'm like, hold on a second now. If I can get my hands on the cleanest water with the lowest deuterium particles that I can get, and I add that to my molecular hydrogen, then surely I have a very potent tincture of super clean water, low deuterium. Low deuterium brings down inflammation in the cells, plus the molecular hydrogen, which is the smallest, most powerful molecule in the universe. So it is the first element. If I can do all of that, then I should be able to start bringing down my inflammation very effectively and help my cells function properly. Okay, so not to digress, but I did all of that. So I started doing 2 to 3 doses of molecular hydrogen a day in really clean water. So my preferred sources of water now are going to be San Pellegrino, always in glass. I never drink out of plastic ever. So it's glass or stainless steel usually. And Aquapana. So Aquapana being one of the cleanest waters that you can get, except it has to be out of glass. You cannot add molecular hydrogen to something that has carbon in it because it'll explode. So it has to go in still water. Anyway, so I'm doing that 2 to 3 times a day. Then I start looking into, okay, what else is great for cellular health? Okay, I'm going to increase my krill. I increased my vitamin D to 7,000. I started looking into other anti-inflammatories like ginkgo, iodine. Comedies is one thing. I strictly would only watch comedies and started to only listen to funny podcasts and videos. Like I like Ricky Gervais and some of the British artists, like comedians. So I would only do that. So I really focused on laughing every day. At this stage, remember, I still thought I had candida. So I started implementing garlic. I looked into abnormal paps, a lot of research and podcasts from doctors that specialize in female paps and abnormal cells and leaps and all that. And they start talking about your B vitamins, how the water, folate is important, vitamin C, all this stuff. So I start doing it. Then I look into mycoplasma. I'm like, okay, extra strength garlic. So I start doing that as well. And I'm not telling people to do this. I'm just giving you my experience. Okay. At this stage, I didn't do antibiotics. That was my choice. So I'm not telling you to not do it. This is my choice. This is my experience. So at this stage, I start feeling really good. I started implementing, I've always done this, but I started to do it more regularly in that I was implementing hot baths. So when I say a hot bath, it's when you get into the bath and you're like, and you have to take a deep breath and you just sit down, your skin goes red. You don't give yourself 3rd-degree burns, but it's very hot. So there's a lot of studies around very hot baths and saunas for activating heat shock proteins. So heat shock proteins are associated with better cellular activity and longevity and the ability for the body to flush out damaged cells. It's a form of apoptosis, to clean house and get rid of damaged cells. So I was doing very hot baths and I was doing up to 2 cups of Epsom salt. And I was also adding eucalyptus to relax myself, and then tea tree as well for its antibacterials and antimicrobial. So this was on the bath, and then I'd have candles lighting. I was doing everything to bring down my stress and support my body in its healing. Then I'd get out and I'd listen to something funny or I'd watch something funny. I was very much involved in taking care of myself, and I was still dealing with clients, but I had a lot more focus on myself at that stage. So I got a phone call from the gynecologist's nurse, so her like assistant, and she said, hey, your results came back. You have a mycoplasma that could have been dormant for years because it's very rare in Canada. So I could have got it like years ago in Ireland, but because what happens with mycoplasma is they lay dormant in your body. So they're like a pathogen. They lay dormant in your body, and then when the immune system is weak, they show their ugly face again. This is what happened in September. My immune system crashed, and now all of a sudden I had this symptom. So she's like, here, take this 10-day antibiotic. This will clear it up. At this stage, I was like, I'm fucking done with this shit. I'll take the antibiotic. So I started the antibiotic. It was 10 days. It was just 1 pill a day. No, it was 2 pills a day, morning and night. And I did that along with my oregano, my garlic, my berberine. I was even doing super enzymes to make sure that I was absorbing nutrition well. I'm looking over everything I have. Was doing silver, vitamin C, N-acetylcysteine. I started to increase my dose of N-acetylcysteine too as well to support my glutathione pathways. I was just doing everything. I did the antibiotics. Praise the Lord. Oh, I also added in a probiotic and a yeast strain, Saccharomyces boulardii, which I've posted about in here. You name it, I was doing it. I was doing everything, standing on my head, just doing everything. So the antibiotics worked, and thank God I felt great, because ladies, you know what it's like when it's just burning down there and you're miserable. You can't sit, you can't drive, you can't walk. It's horrific. And I was dealing with this for months. The antibiotics worked, thank God. And to make sure that I didn't get a candida infection, because it turns out I didn't have one, and they don't know where. My doctor was saying I had candida, that I had no candida strain anywhere. It was the mycoplasma. To prevent me from getting a yeast infection, then I was adding a lot of sauerkraut in as well, and doing some other tactics, a lot of vinegars, a lot of apple cider vinegars, apples, stuff like that, lots of pomegranate to make sure. So I didn't get an infection. I felt great ever since those antibiotics. So I'm going to wrap up. So I went to Foothills on February 11th of 2020, just gone. I'd never been to Foothills before. It is a quite intimidating place. I got lost. I had to ask where the women's clinic was. So I go down, and it's very intimidating. I walked in, for someone who thought they were so healthy. When I walked into the women's clinic, there was a lot of women there I could see that were dealing with cancer. You could see they had gone through chemotherapy. They were wearing bandanas. They looked very sick. They had friends and husbands helping them. I was by myself. My sister's not here. I don't have family here to support me. So I went in by myself, but my friends and my clients were texting me saying, let us know, we're here to support you, which was amazing. It was such a great comfort. Going to Foothills, then you do this intro when you've never been there before with a nurse or a doctor, whoever she was, I can't remember. So she sat me down in her office for 40 minutes, went through my graph again. Look, Shemaine, you're on the high-end risk. It looks pretty serious. Your cells are cancerous. We're going to do this, but chances today is we're going to attempt to do a leap as well. If it's not successful, you're going to have to come back and get surgery. So these were still my results that had came back in January. She was going over them again with me, and she's explaining HPV to me, and that I needed the HPV vaccine, and that I didn't have a HPV positive result, but normally when they see cancerous cells like this, there's HPV present and blah, blah, blah. And at this stage, I was feeling wonderful. I was at my lowest weight. I looked amazing, because remember, I had focused on my health 100 million% for the last 6 weeks, not 6 weeks, but since the gynecologist told me that there was a chance. And I was feeling great. I was looking great. I was like, I feel good. But then she upset me, because she's telling me, pretty much told me I was about to lose a leg at this stage. So I was upset. And she's telling me, you're high risk from what we see of your cells. We're just going to do what we can. We'll wait to see what the doctor says. And she's encouraging me to get the HPV vaccine. And I'm like, I don't want to get a vaccine. I don't like, it's not for me. It's not for me. I've never had issues with anything like this. So I go into the doctor, they make you put on the gown, and the nurse says, is there anyone here with you? And I'm like, I know, I'm by myself. I'm a bit nervous. So she's like, I'll stay here with you and I'll hold your hand. So you go do what you're doing. You put your legs up. The nurse holds my hand. The doctor comes in and she's talking to me. And I'm like, by the way, today is my last day of this antibiotic for a mycoplasma infection that I had, just in case you see any remnants of anything. So I just wanted her to be informed. So she goes in, does what she does in my lady part. She sprays the acid, which is just vinegar, on my cervix, and they have this huge big microscope. It's not a pleasurable experience. If I'm honest, I think it's very traumatic for women to go through this. She sprays the vinegar on my cervix, on the cells that they said were cancerous. And what I had been told by the nurse was once she sprays the cells, then she's going to cut out a square of my skin or of my cervix tissue and send that off for analysis to see how bad things are and when we need to schedule a leap or what needs to be done next. Okay, so she sprays the vinegar on my cervical cells, and I'm expecting her to go, okay, now we're going to start cutting into your tissue. And she goes, And then I felt this really horrible scrape that I'd never felt before in any other paps. And she pushed her chair back because she's on one of these wheelie stools, and she pushed it back and she's like, that's it, I'm done. And I'm like, you're done? Like, you don't have to take any cell samples or anything? She's like, no, there's nothing there. You're perfect. And I'm like, sorry? She's like, no, you're perfect. There's nothing. Your cervix looks perfect. There are no abnormal cells. There was no reaction from the vinegar. You are perfect. She said, I took a scraping from further up the cervix canal that we normally don't do, but I wanted to see where all these abnormal results were coming from on the other tests. So maybe it was further up. So I'm like, oh, okay. So you're telling me that nurse just scared the living daylights out of me, made me think that I was dying, and you're telling me I'm perfect? There's nothing wrong whatsoever. She's like, no, you can go. There's nothing wrong. We'll see you again in August for a checkup because that's routine, but otherwise there's nothing wrong. Well, I was like, oh my God, to say a weight was lifted off my shoulders is insane. Get dressed, go out to my car, call my sister, start crying, tell her the good news. Oh my God, I can't believe this, blah, blah, blah. Of course, if you know me, I went to Purdy's and I bought chocolate to celebrate. I know, but chocolate doesn't inflame me as much as other foods, in case any of you are saying it's very inflammatory. So ever since then, I felt wonderful. No issues whatsoever. I never got the follow-up phone call from the cervix cells that she took up higher. And you know, when you don't get a phone call, it's because they didn't find anything. My doctor's not being in touch, the gynecologist, no issues. I feel fantastic. There was a lot of trial and error, but I was adamant if there was a chance that I could heal myself naturally without losing any parts of my body, without dying and leaving my kids without a mother or going through all this horrific stuff that was running through my head, then I was going to do it. And I did it. And I do feel very proud that I was able to get myself out of that hole, because I've always had a fear of cancer. Always, always, always had a fear of it. I did spend a lot of money on supplements. Molecular hydrogen is not cheap. It's $80 a bottle. A bottle of really clean water, high-grade water, is $3 a bottle. Do the math. If I'm drinking 3 or 4 of them a week, and I also drink San Pellegrino 2 to 3 bottles a day, I do a lot of stuff. I don't expect people to spend that much money, but I'm hoping that I can give you some hope that there are other ways. There are other answers. My doctor told me I had candida. I did not have candida. She also told me that there was zero connection between candida and abnormal pap cells. That is BS. I can show you the studies that clearly show that candida can impact pap results as well, and that if you can clear up candida and inflammation, that you can potentially reverse your results and give yourself clear results. So there is ways that this can all be done, but there's obviously you have to have patience, you have to have faith. I didn't know that all of this was going to work, but I kept saying, no, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this. I know what to do. I had the faith. I can't leave my kids. I need to do this. I did it. I made sure I managed my stress. I watched nothing but comedies. I watched Ricky Gervais round the clock. I watched Harry Potter. It's not a comedy, but Harry Potter makes me feel good. I watched a lot of Alice in Wonderland. I did a lot of singing, a lot of laughing, outdoor walks, playing with my kids. I did a lot of this stuff, and the results speak for themselves. I went back in and the doctor in Foothill said nothing, perfect, gone. Even though 2 test results had told me that I had precancerous cells and I was going to need a LEAP and potentially some of my cervix removed. And if it was worse, things could have been a lot worse. I have clients that have their whole uterus removed because of the same thing. I never looked into the HPV vaccine again, which is my choice, because when it came back, perfect. And I had also done blood panels throughout all of this. I also had thyroid ultrasounds. I had an ultrasound done under my arms to check my lymph nodes. I had thyroid ultrasound because my thyroid was swollen. It turns out that that was from nasal drip. So during this time frame of January to mid-February, I had a lot of tests done. I think I had 3 blood panels taken. Everything came back fine, except my B12 was high, and I do eat a lot of salmon and steak, so I had to stop my B12 supplement and pull back on my salmon and steak. But apart from that, everything was perfect. The thyroid came back perfect, the lymph nodes, everything. And I'm pretty sure this is because I self-doctored myself. I am not saying do not go down the medicinal route. Of course do, but combine everything, reach out for help. You don't have to get an abnormal result or be told you have this and this is what's going to happen. If you're not happy with that, you look into the research and you'll say, I don't have to settle for this. If I don't want this to happen, I am going to look into how can I heal myself and support my body through this. So that's my story right there. I know this is going to help some of you because I know a few of you are having issues with abnormal paps right now. I'm not saying that what I did will work for you, but I am saying there are possibilities. Go in and look at the inflammation first. How can we flush out abnormal pap cells? Or abnormal cells? Let's look at apoptosis. Let's look at heat shock proteins. Let's make sure we're getting clean foods, clean waters. I pulled back on pesticides. I don't eat pesticides. What am I saying? I eat organic. I eat grass-fed. That's my choice. I know not everyone can afford to do that. That's my choice. But there's always ways. If you can't afford that, there are other ways. But this is what I looked at, reducing stress. And now I'm very, very aware of my inflammation. And it always comes back to one thing with me. I can train like a mofo for 3 or 4 hours, heavy in the gym. Everything always comes back to stress and poor sleep with me. If I have those 2 things present, I'm going to be inflamed. So I have to be careful on that. As a last note before I let you go, I did look a lot into cancer stem cells, how to prevent angiogenesis of cancer cells. So that's where the cells pretty much grow legs or hands and attach to other cells. So I looked into that. How do I prevent cancer stem cell growth. So I looked into a lot of that and a lot of Dr. William Lee's work. So he's one of the leading doctors on stem cells and cancer cells. I did a lot of what he recommended too. So there was a big orthomolecular nutrition component of it as well. There was a lot of stuff. If you have questions, just ask me. But we're hitting 45 minutes now, so I'm going to leave it at that. I know some of you did watch it, so I hope you enjoyed it. Hi, Christy. Hi, Natasha. I'm recording twice. I hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful and got kind of a bit of a sneak peek into my personal life. And although I lead everyone in health and I support everyone in health too, I am still a person and I do have my own stuff to deal with, but I think through my experiences, I can help support other people more. I'm happy to say that I've never felt better, apart from I may have lost some bloody hair from the homeschooling, but apart from that, I feel great. Okay, enjoy your Saturday, everyone. And I will speak to you guys later. If you have questions, pop them below. I know this is quite long, so hopefully you can rewatch it again or finish watching it or start it again or whatever. Okay, have a great day. Bye.